So it is back and so it begins, Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Season 6, and I'm back as well with my reviews as per the usual. So welcome back guys to another one of my Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. videos in my review of the premiere of the 6th season, which was otherwise titled Missing Pieces. So I'd start by saying that this episode was pretty stellar. It was a good beginning for a season, a solid one. It does not seem to waste any time. It dives right away into the events that the season is all about, and it introduces us to all the major players, let alone all the Marvel Cinematic Universe and comic book Easter eggs and references, and of course let's not forget all the callbacks to previous seasons. So let us break it down. The first scene of the episode starts with Enoch and Fitz on Enoch's ship, Enoch kind of apologizing to Fitz. You know, I was supposed to protect you and that was supposed to be for so many years, but I couldn't do this right now because I've got to make a choice and the odds doesn't seem to be in our favor. Yeah, my brief words, not his exactly, but you get the gist of it. Now post that moment things go to shit, the ship is broken in half and we're supposed to believe that Enoch and Fitz are basically dead. Now we know they aren't because, well, Fitz is a regular this season, and we know that Enoch was there on the trailer of the season, the very first trailer, and he's with the team as well, like with Daisy and Simmons. Now right now we're not yet to the 1-year time jump that we were promised this season, that comes right after. So at this moment we're basically right after the events of Season 5. Like this is adjacent to everything that we watched on the finale of the 5th season. So they saved the Earth at the end of Season 5, everything kind of changed, the outcomes of everything around them kind of changed, butterfly effect and whatnot. Now before I jump into the next thing on this episode, this scene kind of reminds me of the very first scene on the season premiere of the final 6th season of Lost. Now for one thing, Lost was an ABC series, for another thing, it's been exactly 10 years since that premiere of the final season aired. The final season was the 6th season, and on that very first scene, it's the purgatory timeline that we get to see on the final season of Lost. And we're basically watching Jack is looking out of the plane window when we get a similar soundtrack like the one we get when Enoch is looking out of the spaceship window, and the camera zooms out of the plane, goes all the way down to the ocean, and then right after that we discovered that the island, you know, the island the entire series was all about, is actually under the ocean. Okay, spent too much time on that first scene, so let's move on to the final scene of the episode. Now I'm talking about the stinger of the episode over here, and it seems that Fitz is blending in with some aliens. That's the kind of thing I was talking about on one of my synopsis breakdowns. He's basically blending in, he wants to go unnoticed, and he talks alien, kind of fitting and kind of paralleling what Simmons said early on, which was basically agreeing with Piper. Yes, I do talk alien because what have you been doing with the last year? He wants to look like an alien, sound like an alien, seem like an alien, and make sure he goes undiscovered. But circling back though to the beginning of the episode, we've got a 1-year time jump, we already knew that. We've got that scene that we did watch a couple of days ago, and I did break down a couple of days ago as well on that sneak peek, so I'm not going to waste a lot of time talking about it, I'm just going to mention the highlights. So highlight number 1, we've got a lot of moments with Daviiz and Piper, and they seem to be their own duo at the moment. I mean, yeah, they're with the Daisy and Simmons team, but nonetheless, they do seem to be bigger this season, like they've got a lot more screen time than we're used to when it comes to these two. Number 2, they do seem to be their own clique at this moment. Like yeah, they're bickering and I love that bickering, but nonetheless, they seem to work together very well. He's even calling her his sidekick by the end of that scene. But highlight number 3, we're expecting a lot of alien encounters when it comes to the team in space, so that's just natural over here. Highlight number 4, she is Quake, not the Destroyer of Worlds, because that name was kinda related to the destruction of Earth, which was basically pinned on her, even though all the fault of Graviton. Highlight number 5, we see Daisy's powers in action, but we don't see the extent of them. I mean, we don't see the upgrade that we're expecting over here, but we're definitely gonna see it. Just remember that last May, after the series got greenlit for a 6th season, and after the finale aired, the producers were interviewed and they did state that Daisy's powers, you know, the upgrade to her powers from the Centipede Serum, that's gonna stick around into Season 6. Highlight number 6, Jemma is pretty determined, and we do notice that even stronger further down the road in the events of the episode. And finally, highlight number 7, the shipping crates being used over there, the ones that we see on board the Zephyr. These are basically the shipping crates from Stark Industries. Now the crates with the yellow trims on this scene are the ones that the Vulture was trying to steal off of Tony Stark's plane at the very end of Spider-Man Homecoming. But next up though is we switch to the part of the team that's still back on Earth, and the lighthouse is still the base of operations for S.H.I.E.L.D. But that's basically the other sneak peek I talked about. We've got multiple teams on the lookout for something supernatural, which is basically the portals that keep opening all over the place. We've got Mac in the director's seat, and he's basically trying to manage things from the center of operation. Pretty sure he's gonna get some action, like sooner or later. We've got a group of kids playing basketball, and suddenly this portal opens up in the concrete wall behind them. Now that guy that walks out of the concrete wall is basically either Jacko or Pax, the two assassins that we talked about, the two mercenaries that worked with Coulson. The second guy not so lucky because he gets stuck in the wall. He gets concreted, kind of. Now the thing about Team Coulson is they are pretty heavily weaponized, and we know they're gonna use it. They're gonna use it against S.H.I.E.L.D. They're gonna use it in order to destroy this world. But that though is a talk for later on, even though on this episode, Jacko or Pax, whoever he is, just showed us a little bit of a demonstration. But moving on though to the S.H.I.E.L.D. team making it back to the S.H.I.E.L.D. headquarters, number 1, Agent Keller is portrayed by Lucas Bryant, who by the way happens to be the same guy who portrayed the role of Nathan Warnos on Haven. And the guy's a pretty decent actor, so we're gonna enjoy his presence on the series for this season. He's also the guy who happens to be dating Yo-Yo, and she's keeping it a secret. Number 2, Mac has distanced himself from Yo-Yo, and that's basically the reason for their breakup, and that happened over the course of the year before that. Number 3, when Agent Fox starts trying to describe whatever's going on as anomalies, we get a little bit of a reference to Season 5 when May states,
"Anomalies?
No.
We used that word up last year.
Now the reference over here was directed more towards the fear dimension situation, because Yo-Yo a moment later does state those were hallucinations come to life. Number 4, the talk about Lee lines by none other than Agent Keller. Now this suggestion that he does call stupid does have roots in the comic books, and it does have a little bit of a root in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as well. Now within the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we've got a company named Courtco, and it is basically mentioned on Iron Man 2. We don't get much about it, but it's basically a subsidiary of Stark Industries. And on the other hand, and on the pages of the comics, it is a research firm, and it is affiliated with Stark Industries. Now in the comics as well, Courtco Incorporated was very interested in studying the Earth Lee lines, so yeah, that's got roots in the comics. Number 5, love the reference by Yo-Yo on that scene. Our two brightest minds are MIA, and she's basically talking about Fitz and Simmons. I also think that at this point as well, this happens to be a reference to Missing Pieces, the title of the episode. 2 of the pieces missing over here are Fitz and Simmons. 1 of the pieces missing for Simmons, who's basically searching for it, is Fitz. Coulson seems to be a piece that's missing for Mac and May. And of course there is this one big puzzle that they're looking at, and they're trying to find the missing pieces. How do we find the people that are causing all of these anomalies all over the place? But it is good seeing Coulson's toolbox, previously Fury's toolbox. It is also good hearing Coulson manage from the beyond to make a reference to his days with Fury, his days with the movies, and it also felt very emotional that Mac feels the need to check in with Coulson. Coulson's talk about putting together a team you trust is basically a reminder of Jeffrey Mace, because there was this one statement that he kept repeating: a team that trusts is a team that triumphs. Now, we also get a quick emotional moment for May. We got more than we thought we would. And I did like how it was brief and how it was done, because that's May's MO. She does not show so much emotion, but at the same time, they're telling us she's still sad, she's still grieving, and that is basically going to lead up into her reaction to seeing the new Coulson, to seeing Sarge. And we did see part of that on the trailer, and the fact that she doesn't realize, or doesn't want to realize, that the man in there, and according to the words of Daisy, is not the man that she loves. Now, one thing I forgot to mention earlier is that the preferred mode of transportation for the space team over here happens to be the Zephyr. Now, I'm gonna take the opportunity to explain a couple of things about the use of the Zephyr in this context. Number 1, by the end of Season 5, it was equipped with gravitonium, so it kind of makes a lot of sense that it is able to fly in space. Number 2, the jump drive that is being used on the Zephyr could be 1, the jump drive that Hale used to use in order to jump to the Confederacy ships, in order to communicate with them, or 2, the jump drive of the alien ship that Talbot pretty much crashed into a lot of buildings. On another note, Simmons is really becoming cutthroat. Really love her interrogation style, all these scientific explanations to the guy hanging in there. And of course there's Daisy right there, and she seems like her enforcer, holding the chains for her. Now, I'm not going to talk much about finding the pod without Fitz in it because that was pretty obvious from the trailers, and hey, the stinger of the episode, Fitz is out there, just not in the pod. Now, I do love how May kind of gives romantic advice to none other than Yo-Yo because, hey, this is May. You don't expect May to give romantic advice. She even mentions it there.
I don't often give advice, but that's my advice.
Yeah, that was a lot of talking. Are you okay?
But moving on though, we do get introduced on this episode to this new character that's gonna be sticking with us for the majority of this season, him being Dr. Marcus Benson. And while Mac is trying to recruit him for a position within S.H.I.E.L.D., we get two references. Now, the first of these two references is an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. reference because it's basically a reference to Andrew Garner, aka May's ex-husband, aka Lash. Because this guy over here was Andrew's favorite teacher, then colleague, then friend. But the second reference over here is basically both a comic book reference and a reference to a previous season that's basically all about the S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy. And the S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy, as the name indicates and in the comics, is basically where all the training for all the future S.H.I.E.L.D. agents takes place. Now, the other thing about the S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy is it does open room for one hell of a spin-off, like later on when Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is running out of time, out of episodes, out of renewals, or possibly even in parallel while AOS airs its seasons. So don't be surprised if one day you wake up and you discover that either ABC or Hulu decided to pick a series titled S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy. On another note though, the S.H.I.E.L.D. Academy did exist before, like it was referenced on the first season of the series. However, though, and as Mac mentions, this is about rebuilding because it did fall, like everything that fell, back with the Hydra Uprising. Now once again though, jumping to the space team, we've got number 1, the Confederacy, and they are back and they're probably after Daisy for the same reasons they were after her in the last season. So as I mentioned on a previous video, they do have a score to settle with Daisy and with S.H.I.E.L.D., and as I mentioned before, I do expect Tarian to kind of make an appearance either on this season or on the next season. Number 2, Jemma gets into the pod. She's putting herself in Fitz's place, and she's also pretty depressed there. Number 3, the team decides to make it back to Earth, but Jemma kind of insists, you know, we're gonna do this, we're gonna try to find him. Number 4, Jemma tries to put herself in Fitz's shoes, tries to think like him, and pretty much figures out where to find him, and I guess that's where he is at the end of the episode. That's what he's trying to build as well, like another pod. But number 5, Jemma betrays the team. You know, she enters the coordinates and makes the jump to where Fitz is, rather than making it back to Earth. But finally though, number 6, this might be coincidental, but 3 seasons into the run of the series, Fitz was basically trying to find Jemma in space, but then 3 seasons later, Jemma is the one trying to do the finding, and Fitz is the one that's basically lost in space. But that though brings us to the end of the line with the space team for this episode, so let's talk a little bit about the Earth team before we end this video. Number 1, we've now got a full team of mercenaries working with Sarge, them being Jacko, Pax, and Butterfly. And Butterfly, as I mentioned before, is going to be a little bit more than she seems to be. Number 2, apparently the guy that sorta died passing through the concrete was made of concrete. Apparently he does not have a heart, so the only conclusion that I've got over here is that all of this is gonna get super weird. But everything that we get from here is either about stuff that we got on the trailers or stuff that we got with the WonderCon sneak peek. Number 1, we get the museum that they blow up because that's basically going to be the crossing point for Sarge. So they want it down on the ground, down to rubble, because, you know, you don't want a truck coming through a museum. Number 2, the guy in the concrete wall drops the item that tells Team S.H.I.E.L.D. where the mission is. Number 3, the team gets there, the explosion happens, May is on the ground, Yo-Yo is on the ground, Sarge makes it through with his big truck, and that scene is still so amazing, no matter how much I watched it on the sneak peek, and no matter how much I watch it on this episode. Number 4, Agent Fox dies at the hands of Coulson. May gets a glimpse of Coulson, but based on the trailer of next week's episode, May did not really get a clear look at the guy, so she still doesn't know that he's Coulson. But that's it for this episode. Like I said at the very beginning, really amazing start, really loved it, and I'd definitely give it a 9 out of 10. Great setup for the rest of the season. That being said though, my work here is done, so let me know in the comments down below if you did like this episode. Let me know what your favorite moments out of this episode were, and let me know if you did catch any references or Easter eggs on this episode. You can also let me know if you did like this video by dropping it a much appreciated like subscribing to this channel, and do make sure while you're at it to enable notifications in order to get updates whenever I post a new video, publish a new community post, or start a new live stream. But until the next time that you tune in for another one of my videos, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or otherwise, thank you so much for tuning into this one, and have a great day.